And joining us right now on our Book Talk segment, one of the co-authors, really great book. If you like show business, and this is the book for you, it kind of goes into some of the stories of really famous people that sadly may have passed away on stage. That's kind of the premise of it, but it's a very interesting book. It's called The Show Won't Go On, and we're joined today by one of the co-writers of it, Burt Kearns. He's an award-winning television and film producer, director, writer, very talented man, and also wrote it with Jeff Abraham, who is a PR executive. We're joined by Burt Kearns today from out in California. And Burt, great to talk with you. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, as we talked about before we came on, I heard you and Jeff on with a mutual broadcast friends, Gilbert Gottfried and Frank Santopadre a couple of weeks ago. And I know you really went in depth on that book. You were saying Gilbert really asked you some questions that you really had to almost go back in your memory banks to answer. So that was a lot of fun.
It was. The best part about that is that Gilbert is a walking laugh track. So every joke that you tell just laughs hysterically the whole thing. So we didn't get too out of control with Gilbert, but it was a good time. It was fun.
I always thought maybe I was kind of the only one that was interested in obscure kind of showbiz stuff growing up in New York and, watching TV. And my uncle was in show business, so I kind of just gravitated toward those kind of stories. But Gilbert, boy, he really knows everything, doesn't he?
Well, Gilbert told us that he's died on stage more times than he'd like to remember.
That's right. Well, that's kind of the premise of the book, and we don't want to give the idea that it's a sad book. I mean, obviously, people dying is not fun, but these are really great kind of show business legendary stories, and you kind of uncovered, along with Jeff, a lot that I had not heard about. We're going to talk about some of the people that maybe the stories they may have heard little bits about, but first of all, just give a brief recap of how you and Jeff put this book together.
Well, the idea actually started with Donald Trump, believe it or not. Jeff had gone to an Elvis impersonator show at a Trump casino near Palm Springs about 15 years ago. And at the show, there was a man named Al DeVoren. Al DeVoren was the guy who, at the end of every Elvis show, said, "Elvis has left the building. Please file out and have a good night." And so Al was one of the guests there. He went on the stage. When the impersonator was done doing his act, Al said, "Elvis has left the building," and everyone cheered, and Al went out into the lobby to sign autographs. Jeff met Al, and he heard somebody say, "Al, you got such a story. You ought to write a book." And Al said, "I will, but I've got time." That morning, on the ride home to Las Vegas, Al DeVoren was killed in a car wreck, which got Jeff to thinking about, wow, wouldn't this be a great book about performers who died on the way home from a show or died on the way to a show? And he held on to that idea for 12 years until we talked about it. And I said, let's do it. That sounds like a great idea. When we got to about 1,000 cases, we said, I think we have to narrow this down a bit. Let's narrow it down to performers who died on stage. And at that point, we got to about 500 cases in the last 400 years. One of the problems with this book, when you set out to write it, once the research is done, is that every story sort of ends the same. It's sort of a mystery. We already know what's going to happen at the end. So we had to make sure that each story was different. And we went out of our way to make sure that it wasn't just a cavalcade of death stories. What it really is, it's a celebration of show business and performers. And it really shows how the careers of these people, some are obscure, some are world famous, but their careers and their lives are so much more rich and often much more worthy of storytelling than simply the way they died.
Yeah. Before we get to some of the other names we mentioned that you and I mentioned before we went on, kind of a local connection here. I'm in Sarasota now. I grew up in New York, but really two names in the book. Carl Wallenda, that family is a famous wire-walking family based down here in Sarasota. Of course, he died doing a wire walk, and really kind of a sad story. A station I used to work at too, Burt, a woman by the name of Christine Chubbuck. She was a news anchor back in the early 70s and actually killed herself on the air. I know you have both of those stories in the book, but kind of a Sarasota connection there.
Most definitely. And, Carl Wallenda, the Wallenda family gets a chapter in the book because they really are the example of the show must go on despite any deaths and tragedies. Many family members over a 30, 40-year period were killed on the wire. And Carl himself had said, life is on the wire. I'd rather go, I don't want to die as an old man in bed. I'd rather die on the wire, which he did.
Yeah.
He was promoting a circus in San Juan, Puerto Rico, doing a stunt walk between two hotels when he fell to his death. We had interviewed the cameraman who happened to be on the roof with a motorized lens and was able to take a picture of the fall. And he said he was, very excited to get back to his newspaper office. Said to his editor, "I've got these great photos here." And the editor said, "Well, get down to the circus right away because the Walendas are going on." And then he's like, "What? The man was just killed." He said, "No, the rest of the family, his granddaughter and two nephews, went on with the show that afternoon."
Wow. I didn't know that. Geez.
Yeah. And we interviewed Nick Walenda, who is carrying the mantle of Carl. He's the one that's breaking all the records now, his great-grandson.
Right.
And Nick said that Carl was a good example to the family of when it's time to quit. Nick does not intend to die on the wire. He would like to die old with lots of grandchildren in bed.
Yeah, of course, about a year and a half ago, they were doing a rehearsal here in Sarasota for, I believe, I don't know if it was a circus show, whatever they did, and they had a big fall again. About 4 or 5 people fell. Yeah. So.
Yeah, the family was well known for like the 7-person pyramid.
Right.
So they
pyramid.
Lost a couple of members. And they were trying an 8-person pyramid. And yes, his sister, his younger sister, was very badly hurt. And ever since then, now Nick says they'll use an airbag or some sort of device when the family's up there.
Yeah. Yeah, I know he does these stunts. He did one not too long ago. I just hate looking at it because I don't want to see somebody get hurt like that. But I think he did one in Times Square about 6 months ago, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what he said. He said now things have sort of changed. People don't go to a circus. They don't want to see somebody get killed.
No.
They want to see some wonder. So now, he even uses harnesses. Especially when he's doing something on a television network, the insurance people insist on it.
Yeah. I know when he did the walk over some canyon. Oh no, I guess Niagara Falls about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
They put
Niagara Falls.
They had a tether on him. So yeah.
Yeah.
And Christine Chubbuck, I know you mentioned that story in the book. Not a lot of laughs there, obviously, but I mean, I guess a lot of people think that might have been the inspiration for that movie Network in some sense. I don't know if it was, but she committed suicide on the air.
Some people say that, and it was the inspiration. There were 2 films about it in 2016.
I saw one of them. Yeah.
But what a story. That's another one where there's a piece of video floating around on YouTube which allegedly shows her doing that, but it's not. It's the video. There was a video. The wife of the station owner had it, gave it to her lawyer, and locked it away forever.
Yeah, I worked there a long time ago. Just did some part-time news editing, and I didn't know the story at that time. And then there was a couple of clips in there, newspaper clippings in the station, but they really obviously kept it low key because they don't want people to associate that station with that. But yeah, that's very very weird story.
Definitely. Yeah, that did, and then again that made the book because as we went through and divided up all the different categories of performers who died on stage, we really narrowed it down to people who died in front of an audience. That's why we originally had people that died in front of movie and TV cameras, but we had to get rid of that. There were just too many. So we have people that died, on stage, in theaters, in nightclubs, for a radio audience, for a television audience, and now, of course, social media, where there are actual, not just people that do stupid stunts on social media, get themselves killed, but actual performers who have followings who wind up being killed in front of their audience. One of them, another Florida story, I think it was Orlando, it was Christina Grimmie, the girl who went on to become a contestant on The Voice. She was shot by a fan during a meet and greet. Her killing, unfortunately, was overshadowed less than 24 hours later by that Pulse nightclub massacre by the terrorists in the same city. Yeah.
Yeah, scary stuff. Well, let's talk about, again, one of the great show business stories. A long time ago, maybe, I don't know when it first came out, there was a DVD, or actually it was on the old VCR or VHS tape I got for Christmas one year. It was about the Friars Club, and one of the great stories in that was about Harry Park Your Carcass Einstein, who was at a roast, or I guess a testimonial dinner for Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, did a great routine. I'll let you take it from there, but what a wild show business story that was.
Yeah, that was November 23rd, 1958. And Harry Einstein was a dialect comedian. He had a character named a fake Greek named Park Your Carcass, as in like Park Your Carcass, sit down. He was the father. I guess people sort of know that now. He was the father of Albert Brooks, the comedian, and Bob Einstein, Super Dave.
Right.
He was Super Dave's father. He wasn't in very good shape. He was 54 years old. He was semi-retired, but he would show up for Friars roast. And it was a testimonial dinner at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills. And everybody went up there. I think Sammy Davis Jr. was there, Milton Berle, Danny Thomas, Dean Martin, and George Murphy. He went out and he did his routine before the audience, and there is audio of it that you can hear on YouTube. And he, as they say in show business, in the comedy world, he killed.
I want you to meet a great guy and a fine friar, Harry Einstein. Park your carpets.
Thank you very much. Distinguished and honored guests, my brother friars, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a very great honor for me to have been asked to sit up here tonight on this dais, which is made up of perhaps the greatest array of theatrical talent in the world. And the great privilege of speaking here is assuredly in no wise diminished by the fact that as co-chairman of the membership committee of the Friars Club, that it now becomes my most pleasant duty to officially welcome perhaps the most talented, the best loved, and most certainly the best known couple in the theatrical world today, my very dear and very close friends, Miss Louise Bowles and Danny Arnaz. Danny? We are particularly delighted to welcome you into our club because we know what a prominent clubman you are. I have the great satisfaction of belonging to several exclusive clubs with him, such as the Diners Club, the Book of the Month Club, and the Automobile Club in Southern California. I tried to get into the Los Angeles Country Club, but they don't take actors. But you must not think that the Friars Club is an easy club to get into. Quite to the contrary, it is most difficult. Before a prospective candidate has even issued an application, he must first satisfy us, beyond any question of a doubt, that he is either a resident or a non-resident of the state of California. He then must be proposed by and then vouched for by at least 2 men who are listed in the phone book. Then his name is turned over to our screening committee. chairman of which is Chico Marx.
He was so great. He was so funny. You could hear people pounding the tables with laughter. He finished his act. He walked back to the seat at the dais, and Art Linkletter said, "This guy is so funny. Why is it this guy does not have his own regular TV show?" And Harry Park Your Carcass Einstein said, "Yeah, why not?" And then fell over into the lap of Milton Berle.
Yeah.
And died in front of everyone. There was pandemonium. Milton Berle, he screamed, "Is there a doctor in the house?" And then he pointed to Tony Martin, the young singer, and said, "Tony, sing something, do something." So Tony Martin got up, they took up the band, and he sang a song called "There's No Tomorrow."
When I saw that in the video the first time, I almost fell on the floor. I mean, it's a sad story and it's a hilarious story at the same time.
And again, it's one of those, you can't make these things up. You can't make these things up of the community theater actress who played the same role every night on stage. She did the same thing and died on stage every night until one night she died on stage for real. She would sing the song, "Please Don't Talk About Me When I'm Gone." Got a standing ovation. And, they're ironic. We make sure we don't poke fun at people in the stories.
No.
But, the deaths are ironic and they're funny. The community theater actor who died on stage during a play called The Art of Murder. That's okay. That's funny. The woman who won the Guinness World Record for the longest tenure with the symphony orchestra. She was 87 years old, 4'11". Her name was quite fittingly Jane Little, and she played the double bass, the largest bass in the orchestra, for 72 years.
Wow.
She was on her final show. It was a Pops concert on a Sunday afternoon, and she fell over and dropped dead during the encore number. And again, we couldn't make it up. The song she was playing, "There's No Business Like Show Business."
Well, I guess if you're in show business, they always say, if you die doing what you love, that's the way to do it. I know nobody wants to do it at that moment, but it is kind of fitting, I guess, if you're in show business, right, to go that way.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we looked into because especially older performers, the old troopers, they want to die with their boots on. They want to die on stage, and there's no way that they'd rather go. And we looked into that question. We talked to a lot of survivors of people who've died 35 years ago, and we say, did you take any comfort in the fact that your father died doing what he loved? And they're like, well, not really. I mean, yeah, it's great, but I wish that he was around for another 30 years. Yet, Dick Shawn's son, who witnessed his father's death on stage, said he was at a point in his career where he really had so much more to give. And although it seems very fitting and glorious to die that way, for the survivors, it's still very traumatic, and we had to keep that in mind as we wrote the book.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of Dick Shawn, I saw him, again, growing up in Long Island, lived up there at the time, still live there. At the Westbury Music Fair, there's a great night of comedians. He was on the bill. This was, I believe, 86, and I believe he died maybe 3 or 4 months after that. It wasn't too long after I came down to Florida that the story came out. He was on stage, I believe, in San Diego, and he was kind of an eccentric performer. I mean, he was great, but he was a little offbeat, and people didn't know he died. Well, you take it from there, but there was another one that's kind of famous.
And that was another story that Jeff and I are we're very big Dick Shawn fans.
Yeah.
People from the producers, he plays the hippie who played Hitler in Springtime for Hitler.
Right, great role.
He was in a mad world, but he also was a great avant-garde stand-up comedian. Although he was also a Broadway leading man, a singer, a dancer, but he was a great stand-up comic. And what he would do, he had a one-man show where he would open the show laying on the stage, not moving, underneath newspapers. And the audience would file in, thinking the stage was bare, nobody was there. And then when everybody was seated, he'd get up from the newspapers, eating a banana. And nobody realized he was there. And during the intermission, he'd either say, "I'm going to take a nap right now," or he'd pretend he was in a coma and lie prone on the stage for the entire intermission. Not a good thing. Not a good thing to be doing when you have a heart attack
That's
on stage. He was on stage trying out new material for his show, And he said to the audience, let's pretend that there was a nuclear war. Everyone in the world was killed except for the people in this room. And I would be your leader. And with that, he face planted onto the stage.
Wow.
And everyone thought it was part of the act. And his son was the stage manager at the back of the theater. And he called on a headphone to the stagehand. He doesn't usually fall like that. That was pretty hard. You go out and check on him? Went out and checked on him. And he said, well, what's going on? Is he breathing? He says, I don't think he is. So at that point, chaos ensued. Luckily, well, it didn't turn out to be luckily, but coincidentally, the theater was right next to the Scripps Hospital. The hospital was on campus. There were 4 doctors in the second row. They worked on him, as did Dick Shawn's second cousin, who happened to be there, but they were unable to save him.
Please welcome Dick Shawn. Dick Shawn is here with us. Dick Shawn.
Thank you very much. It's important to use a stand-up microphone if you want to get the feeling of the true cabaret feel. I've been in cabarets now over 25 years. I started in the cabaret business, so I obviously know every facet of it. I know exactly where to stand, how to talk, and that's why I'm presenting this young man today, so he can learn from me how to work. I'm sorry, sometimes it doesn't. I'd like to start out with a wonderful joke. What has 4 legs and lies on its back? Oh, you know it. Well, we'll forget the punchline then. But I am happy to be here. Anytime, when I got the call for this particular show, especially the fact that they're bringing all new talent in, I said, yes, I want to be involved in that. Because new talent is very important. We have to keep coming up with new talent all the time. And I know how difficult it is to be established, how to get your foot in the door. I remember when I first began, the kind of routines we used to do then, it's all changed now. People, they work much stronger. But in those days, life was very simple. Your parents, everyone believed in easy things. And the old vaudevillians, when they came on stage, they used to do simple kinds of songs. It was so easy then. Maestro? Let's do The Girl That I Married. The Girl That I Married. People used to laugh at things like this. The girl that I married was quite a catch, as strong as a horse with a face to match, a dream beyond compare. I love every potato that grows in her hair. When I call her darling, she never hears. She's too busy swatting flies with her ears. Holy Moses, when she poses, she's so cute when she tilts both her noses. Although she's two-headed, the girl that I wedded is mine. I'll never forget the first time I saw her standing in front of a pawn shop, picking her teeth, and I watched her go in and pick out the teeth she liked. I used to call her my melancholy baby. She had a head like a melon and a body like a collie. Only idiots would laugh at that today.
Yeah.
And his son Adam is still just mourns the death of what he called his best friend. On that day.
I heard an interview with him. I think Mark Malkoff, another guy. I don't know if you know him. He does a show on
the Carson podcast.
Tonight. Yeah, Carson podcast. And you're right. The son is still obviously he misses his dad, but he really is still hurt by it. He sees nothing positive out of it, so you can't blame him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark Malkoff actually, one thing we did in the book was correct a lot of misconceptions. Wikipedia, a lot of these lists you see online, they have a lot of information that's incorrect. And we were able to correct a lot of those stories and misinformation. One of them actually is about Dick Shawn, and Mark Malkoff actually solved that for us, and we have it in the book. Is that the rumor or the story, the legend is that Dick Shawn was banned from the Tonight Show,
right,
because he was hosting one night and he destroyed Johnny Carson's set,
right, when
he was being the substitute
with
host.
Rich Little, I believe, was on with him. Yeah,
it was Rich Little. Yes, they did turn over the host's desk and pretend that they were on a boat crossing the Delaware, and and he did destroy the set. But then we also looked into it and found out that Dick Shawn actually wasn't banned from the Tonight Show. He appeared many times, mostly with guest hosts.
Right.
But shortly before he died, he was on with Carson, and Johnny referred to him as being brilliant. So that's all, all good to know. Good to know the facts.
He always did a funny bit when he did the roast. He did it at the show I saw live. He'd come on whenever they introduced them, kind of stood around, stared at the audience, built up the laugh, and then he'd spit out some soup like he threw up.
Yeah. I've seen that on YouTube. I think it was a Tommy Chong roast. I saw him do that.
Now, people might think that's disgusting, but it's funny the way he did it.
Yeah, he killed. He definitely killed.
Well, another one I wanted to talk about is a name maybe people don't remember if you're under a certain age, but if you're over a certain age, you remember the name of Tiny Tim on Laugh-In, and of course got married on The Tonight Show. Now, I didn't realize till I read through your book that he actually, I don't know if he died on stage, but he collapsed on stage. But again, you take it from there. But he was an eccentric performer, did all these old songs in that falsetto voice. But talk about Tiny Tim, if you would.
Well, Tiny Tim was a strange character. He had long, ratty hair.
Yeah.
He had a big hook. He was a cross between the Wicked Witch of the West and Howard Stern.
Yeah.
And he walked around with a shopping bag and a ukulele. And he was a one-man jukebox of great American standards from the 1920s and the turn of the century. And he was not. People would think that he was some sort of crazy phony. But anyone who knew him knew that he was totally sincere. He loved show business. He loved vaudeville. And he managed to get a career out of it. He made it big in the 60s with a song called Tiptoe Through the Tulips. He was a regular on the show Laugh-In. And then he married his girlfriend on The Tonight Show. I think it was the largest audience The Tonight Show had ever gotten to that point.
The toast of Greenwich Village in his first appearance anywhere, Tiny Tim.
A tisket, a green and yellow biscuit. I sent a letter to my mother. On the way I dropped it. On the way I dropped it. I sent a letter to my mother. On the way I dropped it. On luncheon, lollipop, this sweet trip to candy shop where bonbons play on the sunny beach at Peppermint Bay. Lemonade stands everywhere, cracking jam bands, filling air, and there you are, happy landing on shore. See the sugar bowl in the Tootsie Roll with the big fat devil's fruit cake. If you eat too much, you'll go white with a tummy. Lollipop, it's a nice trip in Tibet. You hop and dream away. We on the good ship Lollipop. Tisket, green and yellow basket. I sent a letter to my mother. On the way I dropped it.
After that, through the 70s and 80s, he continued to perform. And in the 80s and 90s, a lot of the hipster rock bands started performing with him, and he became a sort of a cult figure again. He became a character on the Howard Stern show.
Right.
And then there you go. In about 1996, he was performing at the Ukulele Hall of Fame Museum in Massachusetts. And he went up there and he said to everybody, "I'm not feeling very well, so just be ready in case I happen to cough." And with that, he fell forward off the stage with a heart attack. Doctors warned him, he survived that heart attack, and doctors said, "Look, you need to take a year off because you've got congestive heart failure here. You're not going to make it." He went back home to Minneapolis with his third wife, Tiny Tim. This strange-looking character had three wives. He was a chick magnet, I guess. But he agreed because his wife's mother was a member of the Women's Club of Minneapolis. He agreed to perform at a gala, at a dinner, about 2 months after that heart attack. It was in November of '96. It was a bad night for him. He was very weak. He went up, but he did his song. He sang his signature "Tiptoe Through the Tulips," and blew some kisses to the crowd. And as he began to walk off the stage, collapsed and died.
Yeah. I can never figure out as a kid was this an act in any way, or was he really like that? And you kind of answered that, I guess. He was like that, right? In real life, there was no act.
Apparently he was very sincere.
Yeah.
And we found an old New York Times article where they looked into it and they said, this guy's a phony. Well, guess what? He's not. He's the real thing.
Yeah.
It's funny. They said that he was born too late for vaudeville, but in the 1970s there was a guy named Roy Radin who put on this traveling show, and he would bring out people like Donald O'Connor and George Jessel and mix them in with the Shirelles and a lot of people that were stars of forgotten stars. And they were a vaudeville show. It was called Roy Radin's Vaudeville Show, and Tiny Tim was the star of it for many years.
Yeah, great. He made a career out of that. It was amazing, but and he did it for the love of the music. You could tell it was. What a great character. Well, this book is full of stories like that. Again, it's called "The Show Won't Go On." We've been talking with Burt Kearns today, and co-wrote it with Jeff Abraham, and we just touched on really 3 or 4 of them. But there's so many, we won't do it now. But of course, the famous guest who died on the Dick Cavett show. You got a whole big section on that, and so many others that have went to their great reward, but they were doing what they loved. And Burt, really pleasure talking to you, and good luck with the book. I know it's getting some great press already, but I guess you could do 2 or 3 volumes of this, right?
Well, I'll just tell you one thing. We have a website, theshowwon'tgoon.com, or you can get there with diedonstage.com, and we've been keeping track and updates. We've had close to 20 people have died on stage in 2019 alone.
Wow.
And we had 5 people die on stage in the past 3.5 weeks. Everything from a drummer in a Motown tribute show to a bass player in a Chicago tribute band to a Spanish pop star, which is on YouTube. She was killed in front of 5,000 people when a pyrotechnic explosive went off and hit her. It's not funny, but it would have been 6 people who died on stage in the last 3 weeks. But in Florida, I believe it was Hollywood, Florida, there was a guitar player, a 4-time Latin Grammy winner by the name of Dan Warner. He was performing at a pub, put down his guitar, walked over to the bar, and had a heart attack there. So he didn't die on stage. He died at the bar. So he wouldn't make the book.
On a technicality, he gets left out.
He gets an asterisk, but not funny.
Well, Burt, really pleasure talking to you again, and thanks for taking the time. I know we had a little delay in it, but I'm glad we could do it tonight. And please, I know, keep in touch with Jeff. He keeps sending me some great emails of things he's working on. I'm sure you're working on other things, and we'll definitely do this again down the road. But thanks for being with us tonight.
Thanks very much. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on Talk Across America. Please visit our website at dougmilesmedia.com for more great interviews and content. And if you're interested in any of the books we talk about on the program, please click the Amazon link on our website. It helps support the podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again real soon here from beautiful Sarasota, Florida.
I'm Stan Brock. 30 years ago, I formed Remote Area Medical to help people overseas. But then we found generations of families in America isolated by poverty from the health care they need. Together, we can take dental, vision, and medical help to 1 million adults and their kids, right here at home in the United States of America.